welcome to everybody and to our guests to convene today to look at how we can make this happen. And so, of course, most of you know DRI, you are our partners, we are working together, but my idea actually was not everybody knows about the history and everything. So to go a little bit through the different phases and, well, step by step, bring actually quite a few pieces of the puzzle together, which we believe need to come together, to accelerate the energy transition. And of course here, the key objective is to create, it's kind of a marketplace. Interestingly here, there's no market for electricity. Oman starts to implement a spot market, but there is no trailer market. There is start of a carbon market here on the voluntary side, but it's really interesting that we are at a point of time where possibly also with COP28 being such a prominent event, might be a window of opportunity to give this a bit of a push. But let me maybe start with a bit of the history. We're in the 15th year of activity now of DRI Desert Energy. I joined originally from Deutsche Bank as one of Paul's first colleagues, and it has been quite an adventure since then. So most important, we have a very easy mission which we communicate to everybody. Paul invented this a number of years ago. That was more or less when we started to work in hydrogen. I think it was in 2016. What is your mission? Our mission is simply no emissions. Very easy to reduce and hopefully eliminate long-term all kind of harmful emissions. So that's what we do. And the original idea and how Desertec is very famous in Germany, has been set up. And actually, before we started, actually even since the 1990s, there have been different studies, projects as kind of a predecessor. But DRI has been founded mainly by the German industry, to make a plan, to analyze the conditions, to see how projects can become bankable. And as Paul said, when we first traveled to the region here, to the different places, there were simply no projects. It's been quite interesting also on how we were received with a mix of sometimes humor, almost disrespect a little bit, and other things. But anyway, it's been a good school. So from Desertec 1.0, which was power for Europe, physically transporting an electron from the Sahara Desert to Berlin, and many of these other things which were quite naive, which of course would have never worked. But we went through quite an interesting exercise in aligning a very complex set of stakeholders, both on the private sector and political side. And actually the first big milestone was Desert Power 2050. We published in 2012. And that has been a study backed by industry, done at the highest level with the Fraunhofer Institute. Fraunhofer worked here on the national hydrogen strategy of the UAE, our partner, long-term partner. And the results were at the time, even with the cost of solar and wind, economically speaking, an accelerated energy transition would have been convenient 11 years ago. I think we were speaking about 7 million jobs at the time. Energy security was an important topic. And all of a sudden, of course, energy security is one of the key topics on the European agenda. But anyway, that was in 2012. And DI moved to the UAE. We are very glad. And I've been almost for 10 years now based in the UAE. It's a wonderful place because the UAE evolved from a place where it was interesting to talk, a bit of marketing, first projects, but now in just a few years, the UAE has become one of the global centers of the energy transition, with some of the global largest solar plants, world record prices. So the UAE is a really interesting, not only laboratory, really global leader. And now with COP28, I think this is will be very interesting to move things in tangible terms now. Anyway, so just very briefly, DRI is a strange kind of animal. We are a network of networks. So you can say we are a think tank. We've done many studies. So our Credibility comes, of course, from 15 years of work here with governments. We work closely with the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, who uses the models our CTO developed on hydrogen, levelized cost of hydrogen or ammonia calculation. But we work a little bit between private and public sector. We are completely independent. This is the most important thing. So nobody effectively has a say for lean corporate governance structure. So this unique positioning really gives us the possibility to work between private and public sector, to move certain things and work on market development now. And this is, as I said, network of networks. So we are not a renewable energy association, we are not a hydrogen association, but we work closely. We are also not, let's say, more public sector kind of intergovernment organizations like IRENA or RECRE, but they are very close partners. So with IRENA, since actually the inception, we've been working very closely together. They're almost exactly as old as DRI. And many of the other organizations you see here, like CBC from the UAE, we are very good partners and friends. So this is how we work together. Now, overall, we have a bit more than 100 partners from 35 countries. And unlike an industry association, you will find very few manufacturers of materials. So DI is led by utilities, investors, some of the largest investment funds globally, Blackstone, Hy24, on the hydrogen side, Breakthrough Energy, some of our key partners, and Aqua Power, Innova, ThyssenKrupp, they're all present here. Malcolm is here, so is our key strategic partners. And then, different partners from 35 countries, quite unique across the chain. And, these are really the companies who are doing the projects. That's very important, and this is why we can work very well together. Now, DI covers the entire emission-free value chain. So while hydrogen is a high request, we've been working always from a system point of view. So system studies, we've done many studies. In 2013, I remember a 200-page country study on how to move the Algerian energy system from fossil step to renewables, with a component exporting to Europe, because there's always been this keen interest. So we come from the system point of view. We really do energy system studies, how to move entire systems, renewable generation, of course, different technologies, mainly solar and wind, grid topics. We've done numerous grid studies. Even, we have one of our board members is CEO of the GCC Interconnection Authority. We've done a study to connect the UAE to India with a cable. And interestingly, this was picked up also recently. This might step by step become reality. So grids, both on the transmission side and distribution side, and how grids evolve. Storage, already in 2019, we published the first battery storage report here for the region. You can download all these reports from our website. So battery storage has been at the heart of our work. By the way, standardization is super important. Paul mentioned this, and the AFET gas contract has become a standard. So we had a working group a few years back with IRENA on standardization of power purchase agreements. You might have heard about this initiative. The Terawatt initiative was involved as well. So the standardization group on the power purchase agreement side, that has been work DI has been doing, and also Jan van Aken was involved on the AFET side, by the way. Then, of course, on the demand side, energy systems, they move from centralized from baseload. The time of baseload is over. We don't even need baseload anymore. And of course, the demand side is increasingly important. And so this is why on all the aspects of flexibility, DI has been working with things like energy efficiency as well, but and storage, of course, not only batteries, but also long-term storage. And now, maybe just some comments on the development of renewables since we started, where there was almost zero a few years ago. So Morocco has been an early leader and has been doing the world's largest CSP project, also wind, multi-market segment, PV at a little bit slower pace. But it's extremely exciting country now with just a recent pickup on speed on hydrogen. Morocco was originally an early mover, but has intentions obviously to become the key trading hub on the northwestern side of Africa, connecting to the West African power pool as well, having the market pipeline, which is now in reverse flow with gas from Spain to Morocco. So super interesting country, and we see now really hopefully a pickup of the speed again, where Morocco was, let's say, 8 years ago. And going next week, actually there again, we had a big partner meeting in February in Dakhla, close to the Mauritanian border. And the country has really projects in the pipeline which are larger than the power system today, with some of the world's best wind resources, where you have capacity factors of more than 60, even more than 70%, which is quite remarkable. Well, Algeria, we've been doing a lot of work in Algeria, but unfortunately not so much to report about. 6-7 years ago, Algeria has had the largest solar capacity in the entire MENA region. There was between 2014 and 2015 installed, but then unfortunately from then on completely lost track. So let's see what will happen. Tunisia, unfortunately, complete failure. We had an office more than 10 years ago in Tunisia. The Tunisian solar plan, nothing happened, really zero. It's a pity because the country has such a potential, but it's of course also for the political situation. We've had some recent discussions with Libya. There are opportunities, but of course the country is in a difficult situation. Egypt, we had our third annual conference in 2012 and last year's annual conference. So Egypt has done a lot of great things. Binban solar has been a big achievement. You have, interestingly, the possibility for open market access, so but you produce at A and you consume at B. Even with certain transmission costs, these kind of things. You have many interesting ingredients of let's say modern regulation and huge plants. So the largest number of hydrogen plants in Egypt, but not an easy one. Jordan, together with Morocco, has been really the early leader of renewables. Also remarkable achievements, highest percentage-wise, highest penetration, but unfortunately for different reasons lost a bit track over the last few years. Oman has been, almost a sleeping giant until 3-4 years ago. And, out of the blue, developed this huge program, which is now Oman Vision 2040. Oman is probably one of the most ambitious countries globally, with 1 million tons of hydrogen by 2030. So Oman itself is a super exciting story. And they've shown it. They've done, MENA, the Marubeni for PDO, 100 megawatt, IBRI 2, Aqua Power. Very important projects now, and the phases of the solar and wind projects are proceeding in parallel to the huge hydrogen program. Saudi Arabia in 2012, we had the head of K-Care, Khalid Suleiman, announcing the 54 gigawatt. At our annual conference in Berlin, actually, there was a huge Saudi delegation. I think even the minister was there. But Saudi has been a big disappointment in the first, let's say, 5-6 years from 2012. But over the last 5 years, Saudi has been probably, the most dynamic market. NEOM is amazing, and when you go there, and it's great that Taimo is here. Innova, one of our strategic partners. But Aqua Power has been a strategic partner in our organization actually for 12 years. And we've been working very closely with Aqua Power. And, the Saudi market with the projects now a little bit delayed in execution. Saudi will soon break double-digit gigawatts. And then this will move to a sheer explosion of probably 100 gigawatt plus. Which is more than 100 gigawatt, the official target in 7 years from now. Of course, the OE I already mentioned. And myself living here and cycling at the MBR Solar Park in Dubai for many years and seeing this grow. We were at the inauguration of the 13 megawatt in 2013. Then at the DRI annual event in 2017, we had a site visit for the 200 megawatt, which was really impressive, was huge. But now we are at almost 3,000 megawatts in one single park. So this is really action. This is leadership. So I think this is why the UAE deserves to host COP28, and I'm sure we'll see very good progress. Now, the MENA Hydrogen Alliance was set up almost 4 years ago, and this started in a small room. You know, CEO of Mazda hosted us. That was very nice. We had this discussion, but in a very short time, actually, this grew in a movement, you can say. And we've done different studies. Actually, in the first year, we've done the 2x40 gigawatt initiative with Hydrogen Europe, which has become an official part of the European hydrogen strategy. But we've done other studies here on geopolitical aspects here for different countries. The one on the left was the first one we published in 2019, which actually led to the formation of the MENA Hydrogen Alliance. But here in the region, and while this is just two other examples, actually that was together with H2 Global and others on how to deliver on the hydrogen accelerator, which was presented in March last year. But here I see Vache is in the room from Roland Berger and Alejandro. That was a study we did jointly in 21, which has become a landmark study, the first broader study on hydrogen in terms of economic potential, in terms of top job creation potential, the famous million jobs. So it is widely still used and quoted here. And yeah, this on ZETA. I don't want to elaborate on infrastructure or anything. This has been a thing we've been showing in the past on logistics as well. And you're surely aware that at COP27, we launched the Eastern Mediterranean Hydrogen Infrastructure Initiative together with the National German Hydrogen Association, the Hydrogen Council of the German government. And this is maybe to close a little bit and also to bring in a few additional points, particularly from hydrogen, because hydrogen is obviously one of the key topics we are working on, many others, but also on market development, on developing a tradable market for molecules, but also virtual market, not only physical market. And this is a thing we developed together with Roland Berger, the so-called Hydrogen Project Tracker. Well, here you find, and this is updated on a regular basis. Actually, we moved from 64 projects just 3 months ago to 76 now. So you see there's a huge amount of movement, and no single country ignores this hydrogen development. So hydrogen has become mainstream for sure. At COP27, hydrogen has become mainstream. So at COP28, you don't even need to put hydrogen on the agenda. This is by default and by the activities of many of our partners. But I think, unfortunately, in a question of time, I will not elaborate in detail on the countries here. But what I find interesting is as well development in the UAE. So 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, yeah, hydrogen, as I perceive it, was seen maybe a little bit as a threat. And UAE wasn't interested in green hydrogen. It was all about blue. But I found it really exciting that at Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week in January at World Future Energy Summit, while we were together with IRENA, the partners for the Green Hydrogen Summit, and having the privilege to moderate a panel with the ministry, Sohail Matsouri, and other ministers from Egypt, Azerbaijan, and Tunisia at the time. Some of you were there, and to speak about green hydrogen in the UAE. This has been just fantastic, and there has been really a paradigm shift. And if you look at the National Hydrogen Strategy as well, that was published just before summer. So this is really amazing, this paradigm shift which is happening. And there's so many things in the pipeline now ahead of COP28. And while in Egypt, there has been a lot of talk, marketing, and unfortunately also post-COP, not so much delivery for different reasons. The country is going through difficult times as well. I'm hopeful that in UAE, we can talk about much more concrete, much more tangible action. And that's for the DI partners. You get these slides regularly on an updated basis, this overview. So on export versus local use plays an interestingly quite important role. Several countries, starting from Mauritania, Morocco, Oman, have big agendas and also to attract energy-intensive industries to keep value creation in the country. On the value chain, building on the report we did with Roland Berger together in 21, how to localize the value chain was a big question. You see first things moving. John Cockerill announced in May to set up the first electrolyzer factory here together with a partner, 1 gigawatt capacity in Abu Dhabi. And there's other interesting examples. But now coming step by step to the ZETA topic. So we've done a big exercise. Many of the producers, actually they are here in the room. I see Yusuf is here from CWP, Aqua Power, Mazda, EDF. Nahid is here from Oracle Power, future producer from Pakistan. So many of the producers, future producers, they've been involved in this exercise to analyze in this public consultation phase the delegated act. And so we've bundled the feedback, and we work with H2 Global as well. You know, the HINTCO in Germany, which intends to source here low emission molecules. So this exercise has been quite an interesting eye-opener on, you know, all the hurdles, the difficulties, on, you know, regulation in Europe, particularly, where unfortunately here different things, they will simply not match and practically make trade between countries not possible. So we've pointed on many of these things, and at the same time, you know, the possibility, of course, to have a bankable contract long-term, 10 years plus, with a credible off-taker is a prerequisite to make projects bankable. Even Air Products will not be able probably to underwrite many more projects after NEOM Green Hydrogen. So this is a crucial thing to make many of these projects bankable at all, and we are far, you know, from concrete realization of a vast majority of these projects. So this is a very important point, and on the off-taker side and all the regulations around that, this is one thing, but the second thing is on a market. Look at the development of renewable electricity in Europe over the last decade. What was the main driver? The driver is purely virtual PPAs. Look at Spain, for example. Spain has been purely a corporate virtual PPA market when even big players or utilities or traders, they come in, they buy capacity. So it's even, you know, a market where players, they're prepared to take market risk, which obviously since March last year has become much more interesting compared to the boring wholesale market, you know, over the last 10 years. But there's a lot of volatility, a lot of music in the market, but the driver of the market was the fact that you can separate the physical electron from the molecule. This is how you bank projects. And so exactly for this reason, we've been early on discussing possibilities. When we speak about a market which is not there today, we want to jointly create a market for hydrogen, ammonia, e-fuels, all low emission, somehow standardized, where countries, you know, they recognize mutually different standards. And, you know, the big opportunity is to separate the physical good from the characteristic. So you can call it green hydrogen, a green certificate, a low emission certificate, whatever. But when you think about the possibility and even the technical, the financial barriers to physically trade hydrogen, you know, to ship hydrogen, maybe blend it in a pipeline which is there, where you can say a big off-taker from Europe, they just source virtually, for example, ThyssenKrupp. ThyssenKrupp is not only the world's largest electrolyzer manufacturer, but will be one of the largest buyers in the world of green hydrogen in the future. You know, only for Duisburg, for Germany's largest steel plant, 750,000 tons per year. Midterm, this is more than 3 NEOM green hydrogen projects alone ThyssenKrupp will buy. And imagine if ThyssenKrupp just also to bridge, you know, a few years, sources virtually. This would be a game changer because you don't need to transport. You still have a lot of possibilities to consume here. So this is a little bit the considerations. And maybe to close, all the pieces that are coming together now. So we have a complete absence of markets here in the region. But speaking and working with the GCC Interconnection Authority, who has been the only, let's say, advocate, promoter of market, because in the GCC backbone and the power grid, you can trade electricity. But it's unfortunately for political reasons largely underutilized, the interconnectors. So, we sense Oman is the first country introducing a spot market. Other markets will follow. So this is electricity, and then countries want to trade with Europe. There will be increasingly interconnections, subsea cables. And then on the carbon side, there's a big interest, air carbon exchange here, Saudi. You've probably followed Tadawul, the market, and at FII last year, they launched all these contracts. They had a second big option now. So there is a big interest in carbon. Personally, I believe there is an opportunity to have maybe a lower symbolic carbon price here as one of the big things in COP. But imagine what happens, what effect this would have here for just from a psychological point of view, even starting with the low carbon price here and for market development. Super interesting, super exciting. Of course, the fossil fuel subsidy topic, not to mention now. And then you have all these pieces of puzzles, coming together, and these kind of tipping points. Lowest cost ever, 1 to 2 cents solar, 2 to 3 cent wind. A huge need in Europe, huge opportunity to source for energy security. While physically markets are step by step connected, and this is now again to come back why we need ZETA, why we need to jointly develop such an organization and help to make the projects bankable. And to close, I think here in the region, UAE has shown really leadership in becoming a hub for the energy transition, a global hub. And I think the huge opportunity is for companies here, like even big organizations like ADNOC, to be the first mover, even globally, to set up here a trading hub, to go to set the right standards between governments, work this out. So I think this is why we will have an interesting discussion now, and handing back to Marat, maybe to hear a few comments and how you see what needs to be done now to step by step start this together. And we are looking, I think, forward to Taimu's perspective as well, because with Enova, the utility of NEOM, we are also working very closely together, which is super interesting because this is a country in a country, with even a completely own legal framework, where really first of such a kind things can happen globally. So I think this is also a good contribution to our discussion. Thank you very much.